Yep.
Hello, listeners and viewers. Thank you for joining us today in the Human Design for Parents and Educators podcast. This show empowers parents and educators to help nurture the children that we all love. Sashya and I are excited to begin this new series about profile lines. We are sharing our expertise and experiences as educators, answering your most pressing questions and spilling the tea, so that you can create a nurturing and supportive environment for your children to step into their sovereign self-expression and move through the world embodying their unique design. And
Yes.
we're really spilling the tea about how to empower you to use human design in a very practical way. So, Sashya.
Right. You're absolutely right. The impact of some of these small changes that we're going to be talking about is profound because they're really energetic changes, right? And so when we talk about energetic changes, first of all, we have a lot to cover, but also it's hard to measure like the impact of a child feeling really seen and approached in a way that works for them. It's hard to measure that, except that you see that they suddenly light up, you know. So I'm really excited about this too. I've been practicing some of these things in my homeschool. And like you said, we're both long-term educators. Today, we're going to start out defining human design profiles and helping listeners understand why those are an important lens through which we should filter our educational and parental approaches. And then so today we're going to explore the conscious and subconscious aspects of the profile lines because they're very different. And then we'll conclude with learning like the 3 basic categories. So this is just kind of setting the stage for what we're going to be doing in this whole series. I'm excited. It's going to be a great deep dive together. And I'm sure I've learned a lot just starting to do the research for this. I'm so excited to keep digging in with you. It's going to be great. Before we begin, though, just there are people that are probably listening that are new to human design, but human design itself isn't really new. It's been around since like 1992. But I get this question a lot. Is it something we should really rearrange our lives around, or is it just kind of a fun thing like Myers-Briggs or doing one of those Facebook, if you've ever done one of those Facebook quizzes, like, are you a tiger or are you more of a lion? Like, so a lot of people treat it like it's just this parlor game, but what do you think?
Well, firstly, it's a system that you get to experiment with yourselves. And this is something I really want to impress, that actually it's not about just taking this information. It's about you taking the knowledge and verifying and validifying it in your own life to verify, does this work for me? Is this something that is accurate and transformative
Mm-hmm.
through my own personal experience? And
Right.
once you've experienced, I don't think you will ever ask the question, is it, like a parlor game again? Because you will find that it is a deeply accurate system. It's a
Yeah.
deeply, it gives us incredible insights into how we can develop self-awareness about who we are, who our children are, the gifts that we have and that our children have, the wisdom, their drives, their vulnerabilities, and using this knowledge in a way where we are not coming at it from adults, but actually working with our children as it was designed to be used for humanity's expansion. It can really liberate our children to live free from external conditioning and judgment.
Right.
So I want to touch on, um, is it more accurate than Myers-Briggs? Actually, a lot of people ask me this, especially when I use it in the context of business,
Yeah.
because
I was a big
Myers-Briggs.
fan of Myers-Briggs before I came into human design the second time. And then when I came back to it, I'm like, oh, wait, this is way more accurate. So yeah, I'm glad. Yeah. Sorry, not to
Well,
interrupt, but go
I'll
ahead.
give you
Yeah.
an example. For me, when I was a teacher working in that mainstream education, I did a Myers-Briggs test under, one of these trainings, and I can't remember the name. It was an ESJ something, right?
Yeah.
But after 6 years of deconditioning, I redid my Myers-Briggs and I was
Hmm.
completely somebody. I was much more, I was who I am, more like.
Right.
So that brings me to the point that there is a consistency in the definition and the information in our chart, whereas Myers-Briggs is based on your personality alone and who you think yourself to be. And who
Right.
we think we are is not necessarily who we actually are in alignment with our true nature, which is
Right.
what human design gives us, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, like who we think we are could be who what our I mean, like some of the things I think I am comes from what the messages other people have told me too, which could be true or could be their projections at that moment, you know. But I find I used to have a 12-year stint in counseling too, and the assessments that we did that were all self-report, we used them, but we always like had to make a qualifying note that this was self-report because self-report isn't the most reliable way of collecting data. I mean, surveys are great and quizzes are great, but self-report, you know, is always filtered through what we think the right answer is and what we think about ourselves and about the world around us. And so it's really an assessment sometimes of our mind, what our minds judged about us, you know what I mean, or us concluded about us. So yeah, I do think that's the one biggest contrast I see with human design versus a lot of those quizzes too, is that it really takes out the middleman, which is our mind, the interpreter.
I love that. It takes out the middleman, which is our mind. I think that's really a really good, great point. I just want to add as well, like why human design and why, as a 1-3, when I find something that works, I will promote it. And I have 26 in my chart, which is all about transmitting and selling an idea that I really stand in integrity behind. And I
Mm,
know that this can really, really transform how we approach education, how we create a new paradigm for how
right.
we educate and how we consciously raise our children. So, what I love is that human design is very specific. It gives us very specific knowledge about our personality traits, our health, our personal psychology, our talents,
That's right.
our wisdom. As I said before, our vulnerabilities. And what I mean by that, we're not going to go into depth because we're going to keep this very contained. But our vulnerabilities are we have definition and open centers. We're going to talk about that in another podcast. So just listen out for that.
Hmm.
And it allows you to live in alignment for who you really are. So once you've discovered your unique energy, you're able to differentiate between the energy that is yours versus the energies that you're taking in from others. And this is again really a subject that is confined to definition and openness, which we will talk about another time.
Yeah.
But there are three key elements that create the story of our chart, and type is the first thing that we learn, and it tells us who we are and what you're here to do and how you're here to do it. So we
Right.
are both projectors, we are non-sacral beings, we are here to be guides, we're here to be intelligent with energy.
Right.
Generators are sacral beings, they are here to respond to life and create and build things that they are excited and get into right work. And there's a lot of depth there, but again, so
Hmm.
type, that gives us context about what's important about profile. So the profile gives us insight into the how and the
Hmm.
character that we're going to be playing in the story. And again, just to reiterate, it tells us about our learning styles, our life cycle, and we're going to talk about trajectory in a minute.
Yeah.
With your relationship style and what, importantly for our children, you know, what they need or what we as people need to feel grounded and stable in order for us to express the truth and all of who we are. You
Right.
know, we'll go into that in a bit. So that's really the key, the key thing about profile. I mean, is there anything you would like to add to that?
No, not really, other than just it I don't like sometimes when I first heard about profile, I felt like it was a little fatalistic, I guess. And so I'm we kind of throw around the idea of this being a role, and I'm like, well, what if I don't want to play that role? That's me speaking with this completely open G center. Like, are you sure that's my role? How do you know? Because I change my mind. I mean, it depends on the situation that I'm in. I can play different roles in different situations. And anyway, so it is a little more like I've been kind of chewing on this since we talked the other day, and it um I kind of liken it to like if you set a GPS course to you know, you're going to take a cross European trip, you know, and you're going to take a trip down to I don't know, Madrid, right? And so but you stop and take like a detour in France somewhere to sample some wine. But like the GPS will reroute you back to the original course that was set when you get back in the car and you get back on the road, right? And so it isn't like It first of all, it is I don't think profile is like, I don't think everyone, like you said, if we don't learn to live with our authentic self, we may be on detours a lot in our life. And so our goal, I think, is with this podcast, or this podcast, YouTube series, whatever, we're going to probably share this in multiple formats, but our goal is really to help raise awareness about profile lines, so that I think the object is, when we are helping our children be their authentic self, then they're more likely to stay on that GPS course that their creator, the divine, created them to do. And what happens if they don't do, if they don't complete the journey that they were sent here to complete? There are people along that path in the future, if we don't make it all the way, right, that won't be impacted by the beautiful genius that they have. And so I feel really protective about, like, how can we keep you on that path, child of mine, so that you are fulfilling what you were designed to fulfill, because people need you to. I mean, we're all collectively going to suffer if we are not living in our authentic self, because it creates shadows, it creates detours, like I said, on the road, it creates, conflict. So I'm not saying that this is going to solve all of world peace or whatever, but I do think that children living in an authentic relationship with themselves and with the divine is super important. And we have the power as parents and educators to help nurture that in them. I guess that's all I wanted to add. Sorry.
I'm really interested in some of the points that you've raised, and I would love to unpack that. And I would love to question them and to explore these ideas with you. So the first thing I'd love to zoom in on is this idea that that you feel perhaps that the context, the idea that role and profile can feel fatalistic, I think is the word you use.
Yeah.
And you said that as a open G center, which again is about centers, is something we'll talk about in another
Yeah.
time. But you said that you feel like you play many roles. The question I have is twofold. One, do you feel though that the themes the themes that you experience as a 6 line and as a 2 line
Mm-hmm.
don't change despite the different ways that you express yourself?
Absolutely. Like I said, it's almost like, I mean, of course, if I had the power to go in and reset my course and my personal GPS, I mean, we're talking high level soul stuff here. And I believe that there's a higher level of the soul that, some people call it their higher self, that has an agenda in this life, and we don't always understand it. And
Mm.
I've definitely been in relationships or work environments where this didn't seem to be an opportunity for me to be a role model. That's what the 6-2 does. But there was some small thing I did, which was just me being authentic. Like, I had a boundary, or that, like, this is an authentic expression of where I'm at right now. And for some reason that helped unlock the whole mess we were in, the whole balagan, if you will. Sorry, that's a Yiddish term that just means craziness, like this whole like mess. And it started to unravel then, just because I said something authentic. And that's what I was actually called to be in that situation. So that's a totally different paradigm of leadership than, like, I'm bossing people around or I'm setting a course for everybody. We kind of have these manifester ideas. And again, if you're not sure what I mean by manifester, for the listeners, we have like an idea of this charismatic manifester leader. And I really think that that's part of also the drive behind Profile Line, is really recovering what leadership also can look like, because it sometimes is just a person being their authentic self, and that's what they're bringing to that situation, and that's what's helping bring light. So
Okay, but you are so you're saying that the qualities and the characteristics and the thematics
mhm.
of profile, despite the role that you were in or the
Yeah,
context or situation, you were always you once you knew human design, you could then retrospectively see that
right.
the qualities were there. So guess what we get to do when we understand these things and we can actually understand our child's profiles? It means we can nurture those things. We can give them
Exactly.
awareness. Like, I'll give you an example. I'm a 3rd line, you're a 6th line.
Mhm.
And in your first 0 to 30 years, you're going to be the qualities and the characteristics of the 3rd line and the 6th, which are harmonics, is trial and error, learning
Right.
through example, experiential learning,
Mhm.
bumping into things, making a mess, learning through failure. And these are consistent themes. But if you don't know this, it can feel very disorienting,
Oh
challenging.
yeah.
You can try and cover yourself up. But once you know it, you can actually embrace that and actually step into this higher expression of fulfilling what I would
Right.
then come back to as the role
Right.
of that
Yeah.
program.
So well, yeah, exactly. And I don't mean, yeah, maybe fatalistic is too strong of a term, but again, I'm just trying to like imagine what maybe other listeners are going through. Like this, really, are you saying my child has to be this leader because they're a 6'2"? No, I'm not saying your child has to be, but I am saying you'll be surprised how many times they are energetically pulled into situations where them just being their authentic self, being that role model, being the first one to step forward and say, I'll try it. Those things are leadership qualities. And it may not look like the kind of leadership that we've talked about in the past. I think we're really entering a new paradigm. I guess that's and then trajectory too, like we talked about the other day when we were visiting. And I feel like I'm getting ahead of ourselves, but trajectory isn't just about goal setting, right? It's also about like, I think of this archer and the arrow, and so we kind of set a course with our kids. So we get 18 years, sometimes a little more depending on our culture, right? And we get 18 years to kind of pull back on the arrow and aim it. And I just wonder, like, my first child, we aimed in a completely different direction than she went. You know what I mean? Because I didn't know a whole lot about human design back then. And it wasn't a mistake because she's a 3-5. And so she had this messy experience right after she left the house that was totally hers. And she learned a lot about herself and she took a different direction. But had we not aimed so hard, I don't know what would have happened. I think it's still my job to aim the direction that I feel like, by getting to know the child, that's my job to like help them be the best version of them that they can be, right? Um eventually, like once the arrow leaves my hand, right, then the flight is between, the universe and the arrow at that point, right? It's not our business anymore, and we get to be the supporters. And so really, just I think I'm just mostly trying to encourage parents and educators to be more intentional in that section that we can control, that part where we're saying, hey, who are you and how can I best support you? Because they kind of are born, or they come into our classroom without an owner's manual or a whole like life history to go over, or we don't have their chart in front of us. So we really have to attend to like the differences, the nuances, the differentiation. I really think one of the worst things that has ever happened to education is this homogenization where we all get kind of put into a one box, and it's a one size fits all box, and it actually unfortunately is a one size doesn't fit most. Right? It's not really it used to feel like it was a minority of kids that didn't really thrive in that box, but it really is becoming more apparent, especially since the pandemic, that really most of the kids aren't fitting into the one size fits all box. And so I think human design really gives us a chance to explore differentiation and explore the uniqueness of the student that's in front of us. So what do you think
Lovely.
about that?
Oh, 100%, 100% behind you. Like, once, if we, I mean, this is very, very revolutionary. If
Yeah,
this is a big job to really, um, to actually bring human design into curriculum design and into training and conversation in the field of education. But starting with perhaps small with parents and educators who are interested, the key that you've touched on is children are we are all unique and we all have special qualities that in order for, so it's like the world is a symphony and every player has their own, every child has their own instrument, and so every profile is like a different aspect of those instruments. And if
right.
we're all trying to be one, play one instrument, and we
Sure,
can't
like
play
the
that instrument,
clarinet.
it's going to be disarm, dissonant and noisy and
Right,
not right. But if you allowed every child to kind of develop the strengths and learn and be and evolve, obviously there were still universal and fundamental skills that all of us can learn and develop. And I think I want to build back on what you were talking about, and the importance of choice. So when I talk about, or when we talk about trajectory in human design, what we're really talking about in trajectory is a word in the broadest sense, that
hmm,
these give us some very specific bits of data that we can use to help that trajectory. So that a one line trajectory is somebody who is going to want to study. They're going to be
Right.
self-introspective. They're going to need space from others. These are there are concrete things that will support that particular profile. And not like, I had a client who is a 1-3, and she felt that she called herself lame because she didn't want to go out as often as her partner. And I said,
Oh,
you have to understand, as a one line, this is absolutely normal. It's your nature. It's who you are. But there was this such big conditioning around having to be sociable, that you go out and you show up and da da da. So it's like this. When I say trajectory, I mean there are certain things that allow that person to be who they are and to own it
right.
and be sovereign and show up without judgment, and then thrive in the collective as part of the whole. So I think, anyway, I think
Yeah.
we've touched on
No, you're
everything.
fine. So let's just go back to like defining. Can you define do you want to take a minute to define the terms? Like what are the profile lines? Where do we find them on the chart? I think we've
Yeah.
established why they matter, but let's just get to the basics in case there's somebody that's just pulled their chart for the first time and is listening to this,
Hmm.
or their son's chart for the first time. You never
Oh,
know.
okay. So
So what is a profile and where do we get these numbers from? What is it?
right. So you pulled your chart and you're going to see 12 black symbols on one side. On the right hand side, you're going to see 12 black symbols. These are planetary symbols. And on the other side, you're going to see 12 red symbols. These are planetary symbols. They're symmetrical. They're the same. So it goes sun, earth, moon, north nodes, etc. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The black side is the child's personality. This is the side that is their conscious side. It's who they will recognize and who you will recognize once we dig deep into the information. So
Right.
the red side is what we call design. It's unconscious. It's often what outsiders might see in somebody, um, but the person themselves may not see it. And that's not the case, for me anyway. But
Sure.
common knowledge is that is how it often is. Okay. And so, in order to find profile lines, what we're looking at is the sun on the black side, the personality side. You're going to see a number. It's going to be 54 or 32, and that is the gate. There'll then be a dot and there'll be a number but after that. And that number, say for example, I'll use mine, 54.1. I'm a one line profile, conscious profile.
Mm-hmm.
I then scoot my eyes down to the left hand side and I see 51.3.
Right.
That third line, that after the dot, is telling me that I'm a third line unconscious. So we just go one, we take that side, the personality, and we take the third line or the number from the red line and we put them together in what we looks like a fraction. And
Right.
it's
I was just gonna say
one
that.
thing.
A lot of people think it's a fraction. Right. Go ahead.
and,
Sorry.
well, that's fine, and that makes the profile. So I am a
Right.
1-3 profile. I mean, next time we might get more advanced and bring up charts to actually put a visual on the
Sure.
screen.
Yeah, and gates just refer to where the position of those particular planets in the there's like a 64 gates. So it's basically a clock. All astrology is a clock. I Ching's a clock. It's a calendar. I mean, it's basically like so the gates refer to the position of those planets on that calendar at the moment of birth, and then the subconscious side is determined by 88 days before the moment of birth, and that's why we attribute that to the more subconscious or unconscious expressions. And some people like to talk about it as like personality and then more like your body. And because I find with one, at least especially one of my boys with a split, a lot of that subconscious energy is really in his body, and he can't always articulate or express what he's experiencing in his body, but he's definitely aware of it. So like you said, it's some people are aware of their unconscious, some people aren't. But thinking about it as something that's happening not so much up here, but in my whole body is a
Mm.
little easier to kind of connect to that energy for me anyway. So
I think that's really important. And then to bring it a little bit more deep, I mean, I don't want to go into like upper trigram, lower trigram. I think
sure.
it's extraneous. However, we have lower profile numbers, so 1, 2, 3, and then we have upper profile numbers 4, 5, 6, and
Hmm.
they are when we look at profiles that are in what we call the lower trigram, we are calling these profiles people who have numbers below the 456, so 1 3 to
Well,
4. Well, not a 2 4, a 1
no,
3,
just
a
one
4.
three.
Okay.
Right, just 1 3, right? Because all the rest of them have one upper trigram number. 3 5 4 1 6 2 6 3.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
what we call this intrapersonal. It's a right angle profile,
Hmm.
meaning it is experiencing life and making sense of their life and their life path and their expression in the world and their creative contribution through their personal reflection, through their introspection, and they're exploring life on a personal level. Whereas the fourth, fifth, and the sixth, and actually a 4 6 is a right angle, although it's a long
Right.
story. We don't need to get into that. We can do
Right.
it when
No,
we
I
do
feel you.
it.
Yeah. Sorry.
The transpersonal, all that means is that you're learning through relationship with others. So the theme of your path and the way that you live in this life and walk through life is the thematic is in relation to other people. So
Yeah.
that and they say, people have the lower right angle profiles don't have karma, so that because they're living their own journey, and again, that's another big thing to talk about. But the upper profiles do have
Karma.
karma, can
Hmm.
be can have sort of impact people of consequence. So they're having, again, karma simply means their relationships with others, so their
Hmm.
experience of the world with other people. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of describe karma as like some sort of soul tie. I don't know how the tie gets there, but when we correct it, it feels like the tie gets untied and we're free to move on. It's like a kind of like a forgiveness sort of, but it isn't always about like you hurt me and I'm forgiving you. Sometimes we don't even know the person. But anyway, yeah, and I think that you brought up a good point. That there's, I think the common verbiage is left angle crosses versus those are more incarnation crosses, but left angle versus right angle, and they do connect with the profile line quite a bit. And so we're talking about personal destiny, transpersonal, and then we have a special category that only has one profile line in it called the fixed destiny. And again, that one sounds the most fatalistic. As a parent of a fixed destiny, which I'm not. If I was, though, I'd be like, wait a minute, this guy has no choices. It doesn't mean that. It just means that over time, like I have changed a lot as a 6-2 in my life, although there are core things about me that are the same, but a fixed destiny child will pretty much be the same child that, I mean, just in an adult form over the course of their life. They're very they get a bad rap for being kind of stubborn, but they're actually just very consistent. And the rest of us who are going through personal journeys or transpersonal journeys need that stability in order for the whole template to stick together, really. So,
Yeah, I would just build on that because my teacher, I mean, I've got many teachers, but one of my teachers is Karen Curry Parker. I think we both
yeah,
studied with her
yeah,
for quantum human design. And the way that she describes it, this juxtaposition or fixed cross is the 4-1. And they bring the energy of stabilization. They're grounded in their
yeah.
foundation. They crave stability and they bring stability. So it's like what you
Hmm.
were just talking.
Yeah.
And I love this that Karen Curry Parker uses this analogy to describe the difference between a transpersonal profile and a right angle profile, intrapersonal profile. So
Right.
she says life is like a buffet, and
Uh,
the interpersonal right angle profile will be able to go into the buffet and just go around tasting whatever they want.
yeah.
But the transpersonal group will have a vast selection, but it'll be there'll be a rope, and they will only have access to those things. Despite not having the full range, they still have a huge amount of
Mm.
choice, and so um that's really it. That's the way to think about it, that there will be um some destiny, some sense of their destiny being a little bit more calming.
Yeah, sure. Like there's kind of guardrails at the edges of corners, like, yeah, don't go that direction. You need to go this way. There's a person over here you need to work with, or talk to
Yeah.
in the grocery store. I mean, like sometimes it's a random chance encounter for transpersonals, and it really, you don't realize the significance of it till much later.
Mm.
I have a story about that, but I don't think we have time to get into it today.
Go on, no, go on, get into it.
Oh
Go.
no, I was having okay, fine. During my first phase of my life, I was struggling a lot with well, not struggling. I was doing a lot of research about intimate relationships, and I was making a lot of mistakes. That's what I was telling myself then. But what I was actually doing was gathering a bunch of data about what works and what doesn't work.
Great.
And really reframing failure has been a huge part of my healing in the second phase of my journey as a tri-phase person, a 6-2. So anyway, this guy in this collective group, we have like mutual friends, comes up to me one day and just says, I've been watching you for a while and I think I have just the book for you. Would you be open to reading it? And I'm like, book about what? And he goes, well, I just see you. You're such an intelligent, beautiful person. And you just date these dumbasses. Excuse my language. And I was like, yes. And he goes, and I think this book will help you. And it's like, he's like, it's just so weird because you're so smart. And then there's these red flags and you just walk right past the red flags. And I don't know what that's about. I don't want to get into it. I'm not your therapist, but would you read this book? And I'm like, sure. So he hands me this book and it was like a book designed for projectors dating because it was all
Wow.
about creating visibility, but that will help that person invite you into a relationship instead of using your masculine energy to like initiate. Okay.
What book was
So,
that?
oh, I'll tell you after the show because she didn't write it knowing anything about human design, but I actually ended up listening to her podcast for a long time after that. But it was really beautiful because my big takeaway anyway, and I don't other types of profile lines might get something completely different out of it. But the message I needed to hear at the moment was to wait for an invitation.
Yeah.
Because for me with transpersonal karma, the relationships I get into, if they're not aligned, they can really set my GPS into rerouting, rerouting. And it's super annoying, but I'll keep rerouting with the same like scenery over and over and over again until I catch the lesson that, hey, this relationship isn't serving your higher purpose, move on,
I think it's
and
this.
then I can get back on my GPS course that was set for me. And if I'm in aligned relationships, somehow the universe works it all out that their trajectory and mine go in the same direction. So, but it is very transpersonal. Those relationships can totally take me off course if I'm not careful and making sure I'm walking into aligned partnerships. So,
I
anyway.
just wanted to share a very small story, very small, like 2 seconds, of something I was watching the other day, and it was a guy. It was on the BBC on YouTube, and it was a man, one of the survivors of the Titanic, talking about the
Oh,
moment. Yeah, talking about the moment that the Titanic went down and the survival process. So he said that he went out onto the dock and he started getting people into lifeboats and supporting people getting in, and he said there was this woman there and she just got married. And he said, look, you need to go into a boat. And she said, I'm not going to leave my husband. Oh my God, sorry, it's emotional. And he
oh.
goes, look, it's fine. Your husband will be okay. It's going to be okay. So she goes into the boat. Anyway, the people from the third passengers, the lower class group, come up the stairs and he starts putting them, helping to direct, helping. And he said, I've done everything I can. And he goes to find a boat or something, and boom, he ends up in the sea.
Oh,
And it's freezing cold, and he's starting to get really, really frozen, bone frozen cold. And as he's in the sea, he's looking back at the boat, and at this point, you can see the propellers. It's up like horizontal. It's going down, and this lifeboat goes past and drags him up, and it's full of women and children.
oh,
And guess who he sits next to?
oh no.
The lady
Are you kidding me?
with the husband, and she said, have you seen my husband? And he said, I haven't, but I'm sure he's okay. And now he's nearly dying of hypothermia. She had a coat. She wrapped him in the coat and kept him warm. And his words that kind of struck me, and it links to this transpersonal karmic destiny. He said, I saved her life and she's then saved mine. And it's like that. This is what we mean by strangers of consequence.
Yeah,
impacting things.
absolutely. That's a great illustration too. I mean, did they ever end up finding the husband? Do you know?
We didn't know. But the
Shoot.
poor guy,
I want it all to have a nice bow on the end. That's so much Hollywood, too much Hollywood influence. Sorry. And
but
can
the
we solve
guy
it in
did
20 minutes or
say,
less,
the guy said that he was still getting,
Wow.
nightmares. I don't know how old he was, but he must have been 80 or 90 or so.
Sure. Yeah, and that yeah, anyway, and for all he knows, I mean, he was just living out his values and doing his job, right? He never dreamed that there was going to be that kind of consequential impact to his decisions that day, I'm sure. So,
No.
okay, so speaking of partnerships though, since we kind of talked about relationships, we have been kind of trying to allude to that the well, no, actually, we really haven't talked about it all in this episode, but we were just talking about partnerships long term, especially for transpersonal profiles, but for everyone. I think that there's an opportunity, especially again, since the pandemic has really revealed to a lot of educators and parents what's not working right now and what is working right now for the kids. Um, is that we have an opportunity to really learn to partner together with educators as parents or with parents as educators to help, like you said, it's really about nurturing or creating an environment that will best support the child and their learning experience. I'd like to actually, I know we planned on me talking about this first, but just because you've spent a lot of time in the actual education system as an educator, and I've more participated in the system as a parent. So I'd love for you to talk first about what that yeah, what's the opportunity, how do we really encourage our listeners to make those bridges and start those conversations?
I think first things first is really finding advocates and allies there, because to make this work, to actually make a new raising our children, I think one of the things is the truth of the matter is we're going to have to move out of the education system. There is too much going on unless, as I said, we get allies and advocates who are going to go in and do the work and bring this to form.
Right.
As an educator, when I was actually building a school and developing a school and designing the curriculum, the culture, training the staff in my own pedagogies, which was without knowing about human design, which was all about empowering our children to become the
Right.
leaders of tomorrow, leaders of self, developing emotional intelligence, having a curriculum that inspired them to think creatively and critically, and moving away from authoritarian into more conscious, educated, like culture. The key that needs the thing that really needs to happen for my vision and for what I think will go forward is a shared vision and a collaborative partnership between educators and parents.
Yeah.
So if we're going to create a generation that are consciously empowered, it takes all stakeholders to be involved. So we can't teach how to use human design in the classroom and develop learning style if at home the child is under an authoritative regime, or if they're
Sure.
not having their human design honored and being inspired to wait to respond and live and to be invited, and all of the dynamics and that is required for this to work requires partnership. So the real, like, okay, I can answer this on a basic level. If you really want to, as a parent and your child is in mainstream education, build relationship with the teacher, take responsibility for your child's education,
Hmm.
and have proactive and take initiative and have, show that you're interested and support each other to support your child. That's the
Yeah,
thing.
I agree.
But
That's like coming at it with I would say, are you coming with a spirit of curiosity or criticism? And so I think most teachers, again, when we talk, just for those of you that don't know us very well yet and are just getting to know us, we will probably have some even harsh criticisms of the educational system, but it isn't the people in the system that we're criticizing, really. It's that we can, but it's just like anything else. That if there's structural issues that
yeah.
even the best intentioned teachers or administrators inside those systems want change. There's certain structures in place that have been there since the industrial age and can't really move. Moving structures in a system is, I don't know, kind of like trying to change the color of your skin. It's really nearly impossible, right? So And I use that analogy intentionally because I think about structural discrepancies with race too. Like there's certain things that it's almost futile to fight the structural issue and just build a new structure,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's wrong and it keeps recreating itself. It's like a template that keeps, if you can't really take an old template and make it produce something new. And so I'm not saying that I don't envision us completely getting away with collective or public education for the masses, but I do see us really, even now, I see people really trying to think outside of the box. I mean, a lot of people are committed to trying to redeem the structure in some way. And I just don't, I have become convinced it's not super redeemable, that it's a template that's causing a lot of, what do you call it? Like, it's like a broken piece of DNA that just keeps recreating brokenness,
Yeah. I think
and it just needs to be corrected or removed, and I mean, really, if you think about it, the whole purpose that for which it was created, right, was the industrial age. It was basically meant to be cheap daycare, if you will. I don't mean to insult any of the teachers that work in it because they are not there to be daycare providers, but it was meant to help parents get to work. And so even the amount of time, the time slots, the days of the week, all was structured around helping two parents to go to work during the industrial age or during wartime when mom had to go to work and dad was overseas, and then of course the really beautiful goal was to improve the literacy of all people regardless of their economic status. So I think and I do think that goal has been achieved very well, but the box of trying to fit everyone into this particular time frame is best for them to learn. These are the days of the week they have to learn. This is the place they have to learn. One of the freedoms I experience as a homeschooler, and I know that's not an option for everybody, is that we can learn as much at the park as we can at our dining room table or at a museum. I mean, like there is no classroom. Our whole life is a classroom, and we really adopt kind of this like lifestyle of learning. Now, if you're a person that sends your kids to public school, you can also adapt a lifestyle of learning. And my grandmother of blessed memory, she took college classes. Sometimes like you could pay a little like less fee to just audit the class, and she would just do it for the fun of learning. And so she was role modeling to her children and to her grandchildren that learning doesn't have to be for a degree all the time. Maybe you're just interested in a topic. And all of her kids went on to get upper education, and um and we would play Jeopardy and things that like that you'd have to be well read to be able to play some of these things. So there's a whole culture around, we're always learning, we're always keeping up to date about the news, and so I guess I don't think I don't think that the intention of this podcast, at least not for me, and I know that you're on the same page. We're not trying to sell like homeschooling versus public schooling versus private schooling versus tutoring. I think any of the educational options that are working for your family can be improved by building some bridges with the educators that are involved, building those relationships and making it a collective experience, a shared experience between the parent, the educator, and the child. And you touched on this. I really want to build on that respect. Like when I come to an educator, even though I'm also an educator, I'm coming to learn as much as I am coming to share information about my child. So it's a back and forth respect. I respect the role that educator is playing. We outsource topics in our homeschool too, because again, I don't know everything. I'm not qualified to teach everything. So, but anytime we outsource education to someone else, whether that's a public school, private school, or a tutor, we're expressing trust as a parent, and so that trust then can build into respect and collaboration if we are open to doing that with the educator.
For me as well, I mean, I'm in England, I'm not in the US, and we have something called the free school system. So anyone really can start free school and get funding
Wow.
and design their own school and their own philosophy and their own ideology. So it would be great to really actually create a movement and begin, and you'll hear, like, I actually have a YouTube channel that is going to be really focused on all around this, which is about self-actualized education, because I have a deep passion and a vision for what is possible when we train educators who are really passionate about being expert leaders and and being the teacher as the learner and learner as the teacher, and creating a new culture and learning cultures, and empowering the child to be sovereign, and moving away, just moving well actually it's, what I'm the vision I have is for holistic education, and that means being able to help develop the whole child. So the spiritual aspect, the energetic aspect, the
Mhm.
esoteric aspect, understanding the nature of creation and the universe and all of these things, as well as developing their academics and their creativity, and building those soft skills, the skills of tomorrow, which is the leadership, the diplomacy, the win-win-win, the how do
Right,
I have a communication, how can I communicate effectively, and how can we,
right.
all of those things. So this podcast is going to spark and ignite those people out there who have a burning desire for change,
Yeah.
and the idea that actually there is a possibility for something better, and there is a possibility for something new to emerge out of the burning embers of the old.
I love
I'm
it.
looking forward to this thing happening,
I love it. Yeah, I'm like picturing this burning school, and you're like, yes, we're gonna educate the, yeah, but like, don't, I also think that, and I'm stepping on my own toes. I really think that parents sell themselves short sometimes. We forget that we are literally raising the leaders of our future.
Mhm.
Like our children are going to be our elected, like in America, our elected officials someday, our leaders of the world, our thought leaders in school systems, our thought leaders in local governments, you know, um, and, we, yeah, we are, so really, like, I love that you keep calling it this, like the sovereign self, because that is also one of the parenting philosophies and educational philosophies that I abide by, which is that the child themselves has something to bring to the picture. I learn literally as much from my students as they learn from me. I don't know that they're always aware of what they're teaching me, and that's irrelevant, but they have something in their soul is bringing something to the picture, their experiences, their knowledge that they have so far. And so, yeah, so that it's just beautiful to say, this educational experience is a partnership between me and the student, between me and the educator, and between the educator and the student. It's like a three-way, and I would even include, God, divine, whatever, into that. So it's like a four-way partnership, because you know the universe is also trying to teach the child something through their experiences and their relationships. So we
Right.
kind of, if we can all come to the picture with an open mind, like, what am I here to bring, to share, but also what am I here to learn and take away from the situation? And of course, as a parent, we always feel like we're a little bit of a guardian over the process. I think that's right, to kind of guide where the car is going. So anyway, and human design personally as a parent has helped me not steer us in a direction I think we should be going, but to really just try to align with that child's GPS coordinates. It's hard to surrender my ideas about what they should or shouldn't become. But it has been really helpful. And I see the fruit of it when my child looks at me, and their eyes kind of twinkle and their shoulders relax, and they go, how did you know that about me? I didn't even know that about me till you said it. Like, but you're right, like, and I'm like, I don't know. I was just reading your chart the other day. Like, it's not science, it's not magic, it's science. It's really
Mm.
there. And when we embrace it, like the recognition that they see, that they feel when it's right for them is so beautiful. And it makes the learning process so much more efficient.
And also, if you do enter into the journey of human design, to help your child fulfill their potential, you're going to fulfill your own potential. It is a deconditioning process so that we can recondition ourselves as adults. But it's really about helping that child become authentic to who they are, so that they can actually, but you say, follow that GPS. But I think we're ready to wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, for those that are listening, if this sounds a little bit like too much to take in, don't worry about it. We're going to take you one step at a time, one profile fraction, if you will, one profile line at a time, and really do a deep dive. Today, we're just trying to do kind of an overview, set the stage, and really share our passion with our listeners, or viewers, because we're hoping that you can kind of catch hold of this vision too, and help carry it forward with us, as we really admire the work that you're doing. Again, our criticism of the system is definitely not meant to be personal. I've met some fantastic educators in all walks of life, all realms of education. And so I have a deep respect for what you're doing. And I hope you'll just partner with us and join with us and just trying to maybe chew on, meditate, explore some different ideas of how to approach it, because we're all in it for the same thing, which is helping the child get what they need and get it in a way that really resonates for them. So that is our yes. And you we are also really open to questions, right, Jess? We love questions because partly because we're projectors, and also partly because we love to talk about this stuff. So we will have in the show notes, right, ways that people can send us some DMs. We will be happy to include some of your questions and our thoughts about our answers to your questions in future episodes. So if we've said anything that you have a question about, or you have a question about a particular profile line, yeah, send us a DM and we'll be happy to include it in future episodes. So
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And next time we're going to do a deep dive on the 1-3, right? This is Jess's wheelhouse. So I'm so excited. We'll be doing the line 1-3 of the one of the intra-personal profiles to kick off the series. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Okay. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.